Oh, good morning. Okay. So we are on DAF Mem Zayin, but actually last two words on Mem Vav Amid Beis. So let's just get our bearings because it's easy to lose the thread. We were learning in our Mishnah. There were three separate cases in our Mishnah. Case number one is where a man said, Hiskadshili b'tmarazu, I want you to marry me with this date. Then he says, I want you to marry me with this date, and then marry me with this date. Because he's divided up his statements with three separate verbs of marriage, he intends that each date should be a separate mechanism and not conjoinable with the other dates. And therefore, you need to have a shava pruta in one of the dates in order for her to be married. If, however, he says, bizu, vizu, vizu, with this, and with this, you'll be married to me, so then, as long as you have a cumulative value of a shava pruta in all of the dates, she's married. The third case of the Mishnah was where we called it the hungry girl case, where this girl, a man says to the girl, you're going to be married to me, but he gives, with each date he gives to her, she gobbles up the date. Before he has a chance to even give her the second date, she's already gobbled up the first date. So we had two opinions in the Gemara, which we're going to both review today. Rabbi Ami was of the opinion that this case of the hungry girl was going on the second case of the Mishnah, where a man said, bizu, bizu, vizu. He says, because you've created a state of conjoining all the dates together, what we require is that the last date have the value of a shava pruta, because if she gobbled up the first date before he had a chance to finish his statement, so then he didn't mean for that first date to take the effect of kiddushin until he was finished giving her all three dates and finishing his statement. So if she gobbles it before, it's not going to work. The only way it'll work is if the last date has the value of a shava pruta, so that by the time he's finished his statement, he gives her the last date. Then if she gobbles it up, it's fine. That's the way Rabbi Ami had learned the case of hungry girl. There is another way of learning the case of hungry girl, which was that it's going on the first case of the Mishnah, and that we're going to get back to momentarily. But in the meantime, I want us to just focus on Rabbi Ami Shita. And this is what Rav is talking about. Omar Rava, lo shanu ela da Omar la vizu, vizu, vizu. Aval Omar la be'elu afilu ocheles nami mikudeshes ki ka'achla midanafsha ka'achla. Rava says that which we say, that we require that the last date to be worth a shava pruta in order for her to be married, is if the guy said bizu, he puts it in the first date in her hands, and then she gobbles it up, and then he says uvizu, and then she gobbles up the second one, and then he says uvizu, and then she gobbles up the third one. And the reason why we require that the third date independently be worth the shava pruta is because he hadn't completed yet his statement when she ate the first and second dates. But let's say he says to her like this, I want you to be mikudeshes to me bechulan. That's the end of his statement. And then he puts the first date in her hand and she eats it, the second date in her hand and she eats it, etc. Then it doesn't matter. As long as you have a cumulative value of a shava pruta in all of them, it's perfectly okay, because when he puts even the first one in her hand, he's already finished his statement. So therefore, if she's eating them, she's eating what already belongs to her for kiddushin.
Is it part of it because she makes a kinyan out of by holding it?
Well, a woman has to take possession in order to be niknes. She has to be kona something.
Puts it right into her mouth?
No, that's not what we're talking about. You can be kona something with your mouth also, by the way. So the Gemara now says, Tanya kavose de Rava. We have a brisa to support Rava, because the brisa says, he's kadshili ba'alon berimonu ve'egos, o sh'amar la hiskadashili be'elu, that if a man says to a woman, I want you to be married to me with this acorn, with this pomegranate, or with this nut, or if he says to her, be married to me with these, im yesh bekulan shava pruta mikudeshes, v'im lavena mikudeshes. As long as all three cumulatively have a value of shava pruta, she's mikudeshes. So bezu, vizu, vizu. But if he says with this, and with this, im yesh bekulam shava pruta mekudeshes im laveina mekudeshes, there too, as long as they all three have a cumulative value of a shava pruta, she's married. Now, bezu natlaso ve'achlaso, bezu natlaso ve'achlaso. If, however, he says bezu, puts the first one in her hand and she gobbles it, then says uvizu, and puts the second one in her hand and she gobbles it, etc. So then va'od bezu, and we'll see those extra four words are a little bit ambiguous. Eina mikudeshes ad sheyehi be'echas mehen shava pruta. Then you're going to require one of them, and which we explain means the last date is going to have to be a shava pruta. So that's the end of the brisa. So the Gemara's question is, Hai bo alon berimon be'egos echidami. So what's the first case of the brisa? With the acorn, the pomegranate, and the nut. Ilema da'amar la o ba'alon, o berimon, o be'egos, im yesh b'kulan shava pruta mekudeshes, v'ha oka amar. It can't be that he means that he wants any one of them to work independently of the others, that he means to say either through the acorn or through the pomegranate or through the nut. He says that can't be the pshat, because then how can you say that if cumulatively they add together to a shava pruta it works? He doesn't mean for each one, for them to be added together, but only one of them to work. So ve'ela ba'alon uva rimon uva egos, hainu bezu vizu vizu. So if he says, but if he means to say that I want you to be married through all of them together, my presentation of all of them together to you, then how is it any different from the next case of bezu, bezu, bezu? So elalav da amar la be'elu. So he must have said to her that through these three you are mikudeshes to me, and then he gives her each one of the three. So hamid katani seifa osha amar la hiskad sheli be'elu michlal dereisha lav be'elu askin. But that's also problematic, because the very next line said that if he says, be mikudeshes to me with these, then it works. Doesn't that imply that the first line, when he talks about the acorn and the pomegranate and the nut, is that he didn't say with these? So no, the Gemara says, you didn't understand. Perushe kamefaresh. Hiskad sheli ba'alon berimon be'egos, ketzad kigon da amar la hiskad sheli be'elu. No. You have to read that the brisa is explaining, the second line of the brisa is explaining the first line. What does that mean? The first line is, he says to her, marry me with this acorn, this pomegranate, this nut, meaning that he said with all of these, and then he put them in her hands. If they all together add up to a shava pruta, she's mikudeshes. So, and then it says, Ukatani seifa bezu natlaso ve'achlaso umyesh be'echas mehem shavar pruta mekudeshes zim laveina mekudeshes ve'ilu reisha lo kamaflik bein ocheles lemaneches shmamina kol heicha damar la be'elu ki ka'achla minavsha ka'achla shmamina. So you see, the brisa makes a distinction. In the case where he said bezu, vizu, vizu, there the brisa distinguishes, and it says that if she eats the first one or the second one before he has a chance to finish his statement, then you're going to need the third one, which he gives to her once his statement is finished, to be worth a shava pruta, right? But we didn't make such a distinction when he said be'elu, with these. So he's already finished his statement by the time he gives her even the first fruit, and that's why you see that this proves that Rava was correct, that if you say be'elu, then you can add all of them together to add up to a shava pruta. But if you say bezu, bezu, vizu, and you slowly give her out while you're speaking, that's why we say that if she gobbles them, then it's not going to work unless the very last one that she takes, once he's finished his statement, is worth a shava pruta. So the Gemara now says, Hanicha laman da'amar aseifa koi, umadad shei be'echas mehen shava pruta, ad shei ba'achrona shava pruta, achanami ad shei ba'achrona shava pruta. So the Gemara says, now this all works out, the way we've just explained everything, the way we've explained the brisa, works out very well according to Rabbi Ami that we saw yesterday. Rabbi Ami had said that the case of hungry girl is talking about a case where a guy said bezu, uvizu, uvizu. And we say that hungry girl is not going to be married unless the last date that he gives her is worth a shava pruta. However, so then it makes sense Ela l'Rav u'Shmuel da'amri teravayu areisha koi v'olcheles itzrichalei hacha klali kachashiv prati lo kachashiv. But you have a problem because there was another opinion that we saw yesterday other than Rebbe Ami, and that was Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel had said that the case of hungry girl was going on the first case of the Mishnah, where a man says hiskad shili b'tamarazu, v'hiskad shili b'tamarazu, v'hiskad shili b'tamarazu, where each statement is disparate, is completely independent of the other. And what was the chiddush? That if she eats each date, she's not going to be married. The chiddush was that you might have thought, this is the way we spoke it out yesterday, that you might have thought that because she's so voraciously and eagerly eating each date, that even though each date is less than a shava pruta, that's enough to make her mikudeshes, because she's showing through her eating of it that she's consenting to the marriage, even though it's less than a shava pruta, and therefore the chiddush is that even though she's eating it, she's still not married because there's not a shava pruta in each date. So the problem is this brisa doesn't seem to accord with that opinion, because this brisa does not discuss that case that our Mishnah is talking about, where a man said, be mikudeshes with this date, be mikudeshes with this date, be mikudeshes with this date. The brisa that we just quoted, the most that it divides up the statement is by saying bezu, uvizu, uvizu, or va'od bezu, va'od bezu. So why doesn't it discuss the first case of our Mishnah, where he said, you are mikudeshes to me with this, and mikudeshes to me with this, and mikudeshes to me with this? So the Gemara answers, Hamani Rebbe da'amar loshna kezayis kezayis v'loshna kezayis u'chazayis pratahavi. Answers the Gemara that this brisa goes according to Rebbe. Our Mishnah yesterday, we had explained that is going according to Rebbe Shimon. Rebbe Shimon says that there's a distinction between saying you are mekudeshes to me with this, and you are mekudeshes to me with this, and you are mekudeshes to me with this, versus saying bezu uvizu uvizu. He had said that one is where you divide up each statement, and the other one is you're combining the statement. But according to Rebbe, and this is based on another Mishnah, another Gemara in Zvachim, according to Rebbe, even if you say bezu, va'od bezu, you're also dividing up the statements. And therefore, according to Rebbe, saying va'od bezu is also a division. And that's the reason why the Mishnah, the Brisa, is discussing that very case of our Mishnah. Rebbe disagrees with Reb Shimon. Rebbe says that even if you don't repeat the verb each time, you still are dividing into separate statements, and it's therefore tantamount to saying, so it's a little bit more complicated than what I just presented, but nonetheless, this is the way the Gemara explains the Brisa. Now, let's go on. A part of what we were talking about yesterday is marrying a woman by forgiving a debt that she owes to you. And we had said yesterday that that doesn't seem to work, because at the time when you want to be Makadisher, you have to present her with something of value. By merely forgiving a debt, since the money that you laid out for her has already been consumed, and even if it hasn't been consumed, but the $100 bill that I gave her is still in her purse, nevertheless, milva is lahotza nitna, a loan is meant to be consumed, and therefore you're not giving her anything of value right now. Amar Rav hamakadish b'milva eina mekudeshes, because milva lahotza nitna, and that's exactly what Rav says. So nema kitanai, let us say that this is a machlokes tanoim, because the Brisa says as follows: hamakadish b'milva eina mekudeshes v'yesh omer mekudeshes. My lav b'haka miflagi demar savra milva lahotza nitna umar savra milva lav lahotza nitna. And if a man says, I want you to be mekudeshes to me with the $100 that I lent you yesterday, it seems that the Brisa says that according to one opinion, it's not a marriage, and according to another opinion, it is a marriage. And perhaps this is the machlokes. The first opinion holds like Rav, who says that since you've already given her the $100 and she's meant to spend it, so it's therefore not considered to be non-existent right now. And according to the other opinion is that as long as the money is still there in her purse, it's therefore not meant to necessarily, as long as it hasn't disappeared from her purse yet, she hasn't spent it yet, you can use it to be makadesher. So the Gemara says, "V'tispera ema seifa, v'shavim b'mecher shezer kamat." The Gemara says that can't be the proper interpretation of the Brisa, because look at the second part of that Brisa. The Brisa says that everybody agrees that if I want to buy a field from you, if I want to buy a piece of property from you, and I lent you $100 a week ago, and I would like to be able to buy that field from you, I can merely say to you, you know what, I'm not going to pay you any cash for the field, but instead, I forgive the debt. I forgive the $100. Give me a piece of land instead. Everyone agrees that that's a valid sale. So the question is Iyamart milva lahotza nitna b'mai kani? How could that be that one opinion holds that a milva is lahotza, that the milva is considered non-existent right now? If that's the case, then why does it work when I want to purchase a piece of land? What mechanism am I using to acquire the property? So Amar Rav Nachman, Huna Chavrin Mukam La B'Mila Uchri V'Hacha B'Mayaskinon Kigon She'Amar Lo Hiskashli B'Mana V'Nimtza Mana Chaser Dinar. So the answer is, says, thank you so much, you're a tzaddik. So Rav Nachman says that Rav Huna, our colleague, explained that the Brisa is not talking about marrying a woman with stam a forgiving of a loan, but rather it's talking about the following case, not talking about where she owes me money, but rather where I owe her money. And it works like this. I say to a girl, here's $100, will you marry me? She says yes. Then she counts the money. And there's only 99, there's not 100.
He was just joking.
What?
He was just joking.
Well, that's the issue. So the question is, what do you do with that extra dollar?
It was Canadian.
So the question is, how do you deal with it? So, Mar Savar Ksifa La Milsa La Mitbei, Mar Savar Lo Ksifa La Milsa La Mitbei. The first opinion that says that she's not married is because she's too embarrassed to have to go back to her suitor and say, hey buddy, you shortchanged me. So therefore, since she doesn't have the guts to say that to him, she really is not accepting the money for matrimony. And she doesn't take it seriously that he's giving her $100. Since he defined the mechanism of marriage as $100, and she only gave him 99, and he only gave her 99, and you would argue, well, okay, so he owes her $1. No, since she doesn't take that debt seriously, it's not a valid mechanism of marriage. The other opinion is no. She does take the $1 that he owes her seriously. She has no problem telling him, hey, buddy, you still owe me $1. And therefore, it's a valid marriage. Ve'elahada Amar Rabbi Elazar hiskacheli b'mana v'nasan ladina hareza mekudeshes v'yashlim lema kitanai Amar lishmaite. So wait a minute, if that's the way you're understanding the Brisa, and that's why, by the way, when you purchase a piece of real estate, and I go over to a guy and I give him money, I give him a wad of cash, and I say, here's 100 for your piece of property, and then he counts it and it's only 99, there everyone agrees that it's a valid sale, and since there's no emotional connection, there's no romantic connection between the two people, it's not a question of being embarrassed. The seller of the property will say to the guy, hey, you shortchanged me by $1, give me the $1 that you owe me. Right? And therefore it's a valid sale, and it's considered that the dollar that was not paid is considered a debt. That everyone agrees works. But now the question is, what about a statement that was once made by Rabbi Elazar? He had made a statement that if a man goes over to a woman and says, I'm going to give you $100 in exchange for matrimony, and then he gives her $1. In that case, Rabbi Elazar says she's legally married because she accepted the $1 for matrimony, and he owes her an extra $99. Are you going to suggest that this is what Rabbi Elazar is siding with one argument, with one side? Because in that, didn't we just get through saying that if a guy shortchanges the woman, one opinion says she's not married, and the other opinion says that she is married. So Amri mana chaser dinar ksifa lo milsa lamitbe, mana chaser tishin vatesha lo ksifa lo milsa lamitbe. So the Gemara says no. In that case, everyone would agree that she's legally married, and she'll have the guts to tell him, you still owe me 99. It's one thing when a guy gives her 99 instead of 100. Since she doesn't have the guts to say that you still owe me $1, the mechanism of the marriage is faulty because he said 100 and he only gave her 99, and since she's not taking the debt of $1 seriously because she doesn't really feel, she's too embarrassed to demand the money, then it's really not, the mechanism of marriage doesn't work. But if a guy says 100 and he only gives her $1, there it's clear as day. She's not going to be embarrassed to say you still have to give me 99. She's not going to leave that much money on the table. It's not a question of embarrassment. And therefore, everyone would agree that it would work there, and the debt is a standing debt. So the Elahada Amar. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Meisve. Okay, now let's raise a challenge. You're telling me, Rav, that if you're Makadesh and Isha with a loan, she's not legally married. So Ha'omer li'isha iskacheli bepikadon sheyesh li biyadech v'holchel masasu shenigda vo sha'avad v'nishtar hemenu shavar pruta mekudeshes limlavena mekudeshes. So the first case of the Brisa is as follows. A man says to a woman, you know, my dear, I gave you a bag of money, a bag of gold coins for safekeeping yesterday. You know, instead of giving it back to me, I'd like you to marry me with that bag of gold. So she's ready to accept. However, she goes back and looks for the bag of gold, and lo and behold, it's been stolen. So the Brisa says, as long as there's a pruta left of the bag of gold, she can be mekudeshes. But if the bag of gold is totally missing, there's no more gold coins at all, so then she's not mekudeshes. Uvemilva, but when it comes to a loan where a man has lent a woman money and he wants to forgive the debt, im afal pisha lo nishtar hamenu shava pruta mekudeshes. Then even if there's no money left, and he says to her, I want to forgive the debt, and she's already spent all the money, then she can be married. And Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer Mishum Rabbi Meir Milva Harei Hi Kepikadon. And Reb Shimon ben Elazar says that no, she has to still have at least some of the original money that he lent her in order for her to be Mekudeshes. That's the end of the Brisa. So the Gemara points out, Ad kan lo pligi elo demar savra milva afal gav de lo nishtar hemena shavar pruta, umar savra nishtar hemena shavar pruta in. The Gemara's question is like this. The only machlokas between the Tanakama and Reb Shimon ben Elazar is that Tanakama holds that even if she has none of the money from the original loan, she can still be mekudeshes with the forgiveness of the debt. And Reb Shimon ben Elazar says she has to have at least a shava pruta of the original money that he gave her as a loan in order for it to be mekudeshes. But everyone agrees that a man can be mekadesh and isha with the forgiveness of the debt. Not like what you said, Rav. So Amar Rava v'tispera hamitaratzta hamishabeshtahi. So Rava says, you're assuming that the brisa that was quoted to you was quoted accurately. That brisa is messed up, man. Right? That brisa is not being quoted or cited correctly, and I'll prove it to you. Because hai pikadon heichi dami. Let's go back to the first case of where a man wants to be makadisher with something that he deposited with her for safekeeping. Ida kabila aleha achrayos hainu milva. Ida lo kabila aleha achrayos yachi adatani seifu v'milva afal pishal nishtar hamena shavar pruta mikudeshes niflog v'nisni b'dida b'medvar mamurim shelo kibla aleha achrayos avol kibla aleha achrayos afal gabdon nishtar hamena shavar pruta mikudeshes. The Gemara says, basically Rava says like this. This Mishnah, there's something faulty about the Mishnah. He says, why? Because when you consider the two cases of the Mishnah, the first case was being Makadish b'Pikadon, and the second case was being Makadish with a milva, with a loan. Now, the case of the Pikadon, what happened? When he gave her the money to watch over it, did he require of her that she accept full responsibility for it? Or did he just make her into a regular shomer chinam, a regular unpaid guard, where the law is that she's only responsible for acts of negligence, but she's not responsible for theft and mishaps? So if he made her into a regular guard, an unpaid guard, what we call a shomer chinam, so then I can certainly understand that if it gets lost, she's not responsible for it. So... But if he made her into someone who's fully responsible to make good on the bag of money if anything happens to it, then why should the law be by pikadon any different from the law of a loan? So if you're going to tell me that the law by the pikadon is that as long as there's something left of the money she's mikudeshes, then you should have made a distinction in the law of pikadon itself. You should have said like this: when a man gives a woman a pikadon, something for safekeeping, will she be mekudeshes with that? It depends. If she was made into a regular shomer chinam, if he made her into a regular unpaid guard, So then the law is, as long as there's a pruta left, she still can be mekudeshes. But if he elevated her to the status of where she's responsible for all mishaps, and he forgives that debt, so then, even if there's nothing left, that's what you should have said. You shouldn't have jumped from the case of pikadon to the case of loans. You should have just addressed the case of pikadon and drilled down into the both possibilities. So the fact that the Brisa didn't express itself in that way indicates that there's something wrong with the text of the Brisa. Ela teritz hachi uvemilva afal pi shenishtayer hemena shavar pruta eina mekudeshes, that the word eina was missing from your original Brisa. That with the pikadon, when he makes her into a regular unpaid guard, so then as long as there's something left of the original pikadon, she can be mekudeshes because it's considered to be still in his possession. But when he gives her a loan, then no matter how he loans her the money, no matter whether she has a little bit of the money left from the original cash that he gave her, she cannot be mekudeshes. That's the way you have to read the Brisa. And on that, Rav Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Mishum Rab Meir, Milva Harehu Kepikadon. And on that, Rav Shimon ben Elazar says that a loan is like a pikadon, is like depositing something with her, and it's still considered to be within the man's domain, and therefore he can be makadisher with it. So now the Gemara says, okay, now that we've correctly explained the Brisa, and we've defended Rav, because now the Brisa is consistent with Rav, that according to the Tanakama, you cannot marry a woman with a loan, so b'mai kamiflagi. What's the machlokas between the Tanakama and Rav Shimon ben Elazar? Amar Rava ashkachtinu l'Rabbanan b'vei Rav, the Asvi Ka'amri. Rabbi says, I found the rabbis in the Beis Medrash explaining it as follows: B'milva b'rishus ba'alim l'chazara, v'hu hadin la'onsin kamiflagi. That the machlokas is as follows: when you loan someone money, and the money that you lent them is still intact. I gave a woman $100 bill, and the $100 bill is still in her purse. Does the lender have the right, as long as you haven't spent any of that money, does the lender have the right to demand the money back at any time or not? Or does the borrower have the right to say, you lent me the money, it's due in 30 days, I'll give it back to you in 30 days? And the second issue is, onsin. Who is responsible if a mishap happens to that $100 bill? So, because after all, you could argue that since she hasn't spent any of it, it's still considered to be an intact $100 bill that belongs to the lender, and therefore if any mishap occurs to it, it's the loss of the lender, not the loss of the borrower. That the Mar Savra Milva Birshus Loive Kayama V'hu Adin La'onsim, Umar Savra Milva Birshus Balam Kayama V'hu Adin La'onsim. The machlokus is like this. The Tanakama says that once you give her the $100 bill, it's hers. And therefore, the lender cannot demand it back until after the loan matures. And second of all, the borrower is completely responsible for anything that happens to that $100. It's theirs now. And therefore, it's not possible, like Rav says, to be Makadesh and Isha with it. However, Rav Shimon ben Elazar says no. As long as the $100 bill is still intact, it's considered to be still within the domain of the lender, and therefore, if the lender says, I want to use that $100 bill to marry you, and he can demand it at any time back, so therefore it's considered to be within his domain. And furthermore, if any mishap happens to that $100 bill, it's the loss of the lender, not the loss of the borrower. Va'amina lahu, and when I heard them talk about it this way, says Rabbi, I said to them, La'onsim kuli alma lo pligi dibrishus lo v'kayomi. My time logara mishaela, mashaela dahadra be'ena chayiv ba'onsin, mil v'lo kol shekain. So I said back to them, listen guys, I agree with your analysis that this is the machlokus where she hasn't spent the $100 bill yet and it's still completely intact. But the one thing that I disagree with you is that you said that this machlokus will extend to mishaps. I hold that if a mishap occurs with that $100 bill, then in all cases, the lova, the borrower, is responsible. Why? Because it's no worse than when you borrow someone's cow. When you borrow someone's cow, and the guy does you a favor by lending you the cow, no matter what happens to the cow, you're responsible as the borrower. So the same thing will be true by the $100 bill. I agree with you that if she hasn't spent it yet, it's still considered to be within the lender's domain for the purposes of him having the right to demand it back at any time, but still, the borrower is still responsible for onus. So, elahacha milva b'rishus b'alam lechazari ike benayu. And therefore, the only issue is, whose domain is it considered in as far as the rights of demanding it back? According to the Tanakama and Rav, it's considered to be in the borrower's domain, so you can't marry her with it. It's still because it's already hers. And according to Rav Shimon ben Elazar, it's considered to be within the domain of the lender, and therefore he can marry her, the girl, with it if he wants to. Ve'elaha da'amar Rav Huna hashol kardo mechavero bikeya bo kano lo bikeya bo lo kano lema kitanai amar lishmaita. So the Gemara says, well, if you're explaining that as the machlokes, Rav Huna had addressed a very similar case. He said that if a man lends his friend an axe, then as long as the guy has not used the axe, the lender can ask for it back at any time. But it's only once the guy has used the axe, he started hacking with it, only then does the borrower have a right to say, you lent it to me for 30 days. When the 30 days are up, I'll give it back to you. So are you telling me that Rav Huna is going according to Rav Shimon ben Elazar, that says that as long as you haven't spent the $100 bill, it's still within the domain of the lender? So the Gemara says, lo, ad kan lo pligi ela b'milva de lo hadra be'ena. Aval b'she'ela de hadra be'ena divrei hakol bikeya bo in, lo bikeya bo lo kina'o. So the Gemara says, no, in that situation, even the Tanakama agrees that as long as the borrower has not yet started using the axe to chop trees with, it's still considered to be within the domain of the lender. Why? Because since an axe is meant to be returned back to the lender anyway, so then everyone agrees that as long as the guy hasn't started using it yet, it's still within the domain of the lender. The only machlokus is on a $100 bill. Cash is meant to be spent. So the Tanakama says that even if she hasn't spent it yet, it's still considered within her domain. Because the lenders basically said, I don't want it anymore, it's yours now. In 30 days, you'll give me back a different $100 bill. So that's the reason why there's a machlokas, that the Tanakama says in that case, it's hers. And in the Rav Shimon ben Elazar says, no, it's still his, the lender's. But in a case of an axe, where everyone knows that the borrower has to return back the same axe, everyone agrees that until you actually start using it, it's considered within the domain of the lender. Nema kitanai. Let's go back to the case of marrying a girl with milvim. Perhaps what Rab's halacha is a machlokas tanoim. Rab says you can't marry her with a milva, but we're going to show you a brisa that shows that there's a machlokas. His kad sheli b'shtar chov shahaya lo milva biyad acherim v'hirsha aleihim. A man says to a woman, I want you to marry me with this promissory note, with this IOU. You see this IOU? I'm giving it to you for kiddushin. Or if he says to her, you know what? Other people owe me money, I'm giving you over the rights of collection. So in both of those cases, Reb Meir omer mikudeshes, v'chachamim omrim eina mikudeshes. Reb Meir says it's a valid marriage, and the chachamim say it's not a valid marriage. So Haishtar chov heichidami. So what's the case of the promissory note? The first case. Ilay mishtar chov da'acherim hainu milva biyad acherim. Elolav shtar chov dida. Uva makadish b'milva kemiflagi. You can't tell me that he's giving her a promissory note that he has a right to collect someone else's debt, because that was the second case of the brisa. The second case of the brisa is where he told her, look, I have rights of collection from Ploni and I'm giving that over to you. So it must be the first case where he gives her a promissory note, is where the promissory note is that he can collect from her. So you see that if a man wants to forgive a debt, he can marry her with the forgiveness of that debt. So you see that Rav Meir says it works, and the Chachamim say it doesn't work. So Rav is siding like the Chachamim, but Rav Meir would disagree. So the Gemara says no. La'olam shtar chov da'acherim v'hacha b'milva b'shtar v'milva al peh kamiflagi. So the Gemara says no. Really, in reality, both cases of the brisa is where a man is marrying a woman not with forgiving the debt that she owes him, because that could be that everyone would agree that that doesn't work. The only case that they're arguing about is whether can I marry a girl with a debt that is owed to me from someone else, and I give her something of real value, I give her the rights of collection of that other debt. Why then list two cases instead of one case? It's the same case. The two cases are, one is where the IOU is in writing, and the other one is where the debt is only a verbal debt. So the machlokes is as follows. So b'milva b'shtar b'may polig b'plukta de Rebbe v'rabbanon kamiflegi. The machlokes, when the IOU is in writing, they're arguing about whether, when a man gives over an IOU to a third party, whether that third party has rights of collection just stamazoi without doing anything else. The Tanya osios niknos b'mesira divrei Rebbe v'chachamim omrim ben shekasav v'lo maser ben shemasav v'lo kasav lo kana ad sheyichto v'yimsor. Mar islei de Rebbe, mar leslei de Rebbe. One way of understanding the machlokas is like this, that we're talking about a case where a man gives over to the girl a promissory note and says, you can collect from Plony with this promissory note. There's a machlokas as to whether that works or not. According to Rebbe, that's perfectly fine. As long as I give her the note, she can take that note, register it in court, and collect on the debt. And so therefore I've given her something of value. But the Chachamim disagree. And that's why the Chachamim hold that it's not a valid marriage. Because the Chachamim say, just by giving over someone a promissory note, that's not enough. You have to write a separate piece of paper saying, I have hereby consigned this debt over to this woman who's the third party. And without that extra piece of paper, she does, just because she's holding the IOU doesn't give her the rights to collect it. And that's why the Chachamim say it's not a valid marriage. So we're not talking about being Makadesh B'milva, where he's forgiving the debt that she owes him. He's giving her a promissory note, and the question only is, does the promissory note have value without that extra piece of paper or not? I'll tell you another explanation as to what the machlokas is over here. It's a machlokas about Rav Papa's law, that really in reality maybe he gave her that extra piece of paper, but there's still a machlokas. Amar Rav Papa, Haiman dezavin shtara lechavri tzarech lemichtav lekini lachu v'chol shibude, mar islei de Rav Papa, mar leslei de Rav Papa. That when you consign over to someone else a promissory note that you can collect on, you have to write, according to Rav Papa, you have to write explicitly, I hereby give you over rights of collection for this note and all of its shibudim, all of its liens and subjugations. And if you don't write that explicitly in the note, when you consign over the promissory note, it's not valid. So that's why Reb Meir says you don't need to do that, and therefore it's valid what he gave to her. And the Chachamim say, no, you didn't write v'chol shibude, you didn't write in all of its subjugations, and therefore it's not an item of value that you can be Makadish her with. V'iba Yisayim, I'll give you another explanation what the machlokas is. The Kuli Alma Islahu de Rav Papa, B'acha b'dishmul kamiflagi. Let's say you wrote over Hu v'chol shibude, you gave that to her and everything's fine, but there's another machlokas. The machlokas is the Shmuel. The Omar Shmuel hamocher shtar chov lechavera v'chazru mochlo mochol v'afili yoresh mochel. The Mar Islay de Shmuel or Mar Leslay de Shmuel. Here's the issue. I sell a promissory note to this lady. Okay, let's say I sell her a promissory note. She now has rights of collection. But what if I go ahead in front of two witnesses and I say, I am hereby moichel the debt that this third party owes me? Can she now go ahead and collect on the debt?
After you give it over to her?
After I sold it to her.
So how can you?
The answer is, Shmuel says that her whole basis of collection is through me. If I forgive the debt, even though I've sold it to her, she can't collect it anymore. And not only that, but even if after I die, if one of my heirs forgives the debt, she also can't collect on it. So this is the machlokus. Rabbi Meir says, I don't hold of that din of Shmuel. Once you sell a debt, you can't forgive it. Right. And that's why it's a valid kiddushin, because once you've given it to her, you've given her something of value that can never be rescinded, and therefore it's a valid kiddushin. Right. The Chachamim say, no. Since there's always the possibility of you rescinding the debt, of you absolving the debt, therefore potentially what you've given her has no value, and therefore she's not mekudeshes. And finally, we'll go to one more possibility. The ibayis ema du kuli alma islay dishmuel v'hacha be'isha kamiflagi mar saver isha sam chadaita meimar amr lo shavik leili didi umachalei la'achrini umar saver isha nami lo sam chadaita. The machlokus is, no, everyone holds of Shmuel, that even after I sell a promissory note, I can forgive the debt, and therefore the note has no value. The machlokus is, when a woman accepts it for kiddushin, what is her psychology? What is she thinking? If you hold that it's a valid marriage, like Reb Meir says, it's because why? She says to herself, yeah, I know that technically he could forgive the debt, but he would never do that to me. I'm his wife after all. What husband would cause his wife such monetary loss? The Chachamim say no. A woman is not going to trust a man who's going to marry her with a promissory note. She's always going to be thinking in the back of her head, oh no, what if he forgives the debt? And as a result, the Chachamim say there's no smichus das, there's no reliance, there's no consideration that she can rely upon for the marriage to take effect, and therefore it's not a valid marriage. But at the end of the day, the way that we're explaining this Brisa now is that it's not that he's forgiving a debt that she owes him, he is giving her a promissory note that she can use to collect from others. And therefore, this has nothing to do with Rab's halacha, who says, a mekadesh b'milva ain't a mekudeshes. So if you try to marry a woman by forgiving a debt, it's not a valid marriage. We'll hold it here. Have a wonderful